Hey everyone, welcome Thursday edition Traded Black podcast. I'm your host sdales. Thanks for checking in. Why are we on here today? Well, we said it yesterday. We're going to dive into earnings season as it's underway. Yesterday, GTI, and this morning, both Verano and Trulieve, the big three companies in the space. What do all these numbers mean? I know a lot of you had some questions. Do you think they come in good? Were you disappointed with some of the year-over-year growth? We all need to basically break down, analyze what these numbers. So we've got two great co-host coming in here today, TDR Property. Let's welcome in TDR co-host Anthony Varell. Happy Thursday. Good to see you.
John.
I know you're fresh off the earnings call with Trulieve. I understand. Was it Trulieve or Verano?
Trulieve and Verano are both today.
Yeah, I know. But you were on an earnings call, I think, what?
I was listening to the recording.
You were listening to the recording. My apologies. But we'll get into that, what you learned as well. Let's bring in TDR Head of Research, Bill McNarland, back to the podcast. It's been a couple of weeks. Good to see you, Bill. How are things?
Oh, great. Yeah, great to be here.
Good. So, gents, it's Thursday. I know there's a lot of good information that we want to dive into, so let's jump right into that here. So this is the TDR Traded Black podcast, and we begin with Trulieve, their latest earnings. The company announced their Q4 earnings. Anthony, quickly outlining the numbers, they reported 4% revenue increase in Q4 of $287 million, a gross margin of 54%. With a significant portion of that, meaning 95%, were derived from retail sales. They also reported a net loss of $23 million. So when reading into this, I was looking online. There were some investors in the investor space, on Twitter, Reddit, and stock twits that were a little disappointed as far as year-over-year growth. But personally for you, were these numbers not anticipated? What was the big takeaway for you in first glancing at these numbers?
I'm not surprised at any of the numbers fundamentally. I know that revenue came in slightly above at a 4% growth. I mean, what I'm the most happy about is what I pointed out on the last show, that Q2 2023 was an inflection point for the business.
Yep.
They've boosted the numbers again for another quarter. This is going to be the third quarter in a row where the trend has changed. Mm-hmm. Revenue was up, gross margin was up, adjusted EBITDA was up. They're trending in the right direction. These numbers, they're great. I mean, Trulieve did $1.13 billion for 2023. I'm not going to balk at that number. That was an impressive number. I'm more concerned of what's going on with the business. I'm not going to put my tax attorney hat on here and try to dissect what Kim's doing. She actually got $100 million back from the IRS in tax refunds.
Wow.
They don't give you that money unless you actually have a pretty solid case and precedent. That's a big win. They've got $208 million on the balance sheet in cash as of the end of the quarter. That's another big win. They've opened 17 stores in 2023. They plan to open 25 stores in 2024 in markets such as Ohio and Pennsylvania.
Yep.
That's another good win.
Yep.
They have their 750,000 square foot Jeffco facility in full capacity. And they're bringing on idle capacity that they shut down to get Jeffco fully scaled. She's preparing for adult use. She's preparing for the demand in the market. Again, a big fundamental W that I think is also a big place of merit for the business.
Yeah.
The conference call was interesting. They've got a express dispensary footprint that they're testing out in Crawfordville, Florida. They can man that fully with 2 to 3 employees on a daily basis. So you're saving on human capital there. So you could see margins be bigger within that retail experience. And that's working for them. I think it overall was a good quarter. Like I said, I'm not purchasing Trulieve stock. I'm not purchasing GTI. I'm not purchasing Verano for what they did in 2023. I'm purchasing their stock for what I think they're going to be doing in 2025 and 2026.
Yep.
And so this is a good baseline for what these businesses are doing.
Yeah, looking at some of the comments, I think they are agreeing with your sentiment. Happy Bruner writes, well said. Bill, I know that you're not an attorney, but Anthony brought up the whole tax attorney approach and how the IRS basically gave them a refund. So when we look at this, you've got a background in accounting. You're an analyst yourself. This had to have been one of the things that grabbed your attention when first seeing these latest earnings, did it not?
Yeah, I did. A number of comments I'll make about Trulieve's earnings when I read everything over. I think one, I think the numbers compared to the industry on average are a bit lower on the revenue growth. The second thing I saw too is this is common in the cannabis industry. A number of the numbers were adjusted. So what does that briefly mean? It's part of accounting. An example of an adjustment would be an event you don't expect to happen again. So let's you decided, I'm just going to give you a random thing. This has nothing to do with Trulieve. Imagine you decided to lay off a number of employees, or you had to close a factory. So you would say, okay, we're adjusting the numbers this year because we don't expect this to happen again. So that was one thing I noticed in all the reports that I looked at today, that a lot of the numbers were adjusted, and usually they adjust more favorably. So that's just a cautionary comment that I saw. But overall, it was really fantastic about the tax revenue, or the refund.
Yeah, yeah.
Really helpful, and that can go toward strengthening the balance sheet significantly.
Yeah. Okay, but I know it's early as far as earnings season, but when we look at previous earnings reports that they've reported, like how would you, I guess, compare some of these numbers from what you saw here and from the past, and like for that matter with the overall industry?
Well, the overall industry, it's cannabis should be growing at about 14% a year over the next 5 years. So that's Statista's estimate for the industry. So when these companies, if you see that they're growing around 7%, they're lagging. But then there's some other companies that are growing at a much quicker clip. So it's something to look at to see how close they are to the industry average. But cannabis is a high barrier to entry, the growth rate. Like liquor beverage is around 4%, tobacco's 2.5%, GDP in the US is somewhere around 2%. So this is a high, difficult something to try to accomplish, but that is what on average is being accomplished in the industry.
Yeah, I assume you agree with a lot of that stuff he's saying, Anthony.
Yeah. I mean, I do firmly believe that growth is on the horizon. I mean, one main point of correlation between GTI, Trulieve, and Verano: Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida. Those are three of the biggest growth catalysts on the horizon for the industry.
Point. Yeah.
Verano we'll get into Verano's numbers, but Verano has a formidable footprint in Florida. I think it's 73 stores. They actually grew revenue quarter over quarter in the state of Florida. Trulieve, Kim's ready to roll. Kim is ready to rock and roll with Florida adult use. She's got the brand partnerships. She's got the premium flower. Their Modern Flower brand, which is their mid-tier brand, is actually starting to resonate with consumers that were previously shopping in the value segment. That was another thing that she called on. They're actually seeing people come up from the value segment into the mid-tier products.
Yeah.
I think Modern Flower was one of the top 15 fastest growing cannabis brands in the country. They're ready to rock, and Florida is going to boom if we get adult use happening. Granted, like I said, adult use is happening, best case scenario, May 2025. It'll probably come online July 2025. So, I mean, we've got a ways to go, but she's ready to roll. She's got the capacity. She's got the retail footprint. And I mean, Florida, in its own right, her Florida business would be a great publicly traded company if it was a single state operator. She also has plenty more in the portfolio to like on a go forward basis. Yeah. And I mean, that's why I called it probably the most investable company in the space this morning. People were like, oh, well, GTI reported this, GTBI reported that. If you want to take in the disparity of market cap and the value of what she's sitting on in Florida, I would call them probably the most investable business in the cannabis space.
Kudos to Kim Rivers. She's worked her, she's worked so hard, but what a model that she's built out. And you touched on some of these catalyst moments that we could get, including adult use on the ballot. That outcome is decided by, what is the date of that?
I think the shot clock, I think what this Florida Supreme Court's going to do is let the shot clock run out. So April 1st, they have until to address it. If they don't, and it's April 2nd, and we've heard crickets from the Florida legislature or the Florida Supreme Court, it automatically goes on the ballot in November.
So no news is good news.
No news is great news. No news is fantastic news.
Bill, I'm going to ask the same question at the end of each company, but going forward, estimates and statements, as far as Trulieve, what would you say is some forward statements or estimates, I should say, for Trulieve here in 2024? And maybe actually more importantly for our audience, how do you calculate some of these estimates?
They're shockingly high. On a revenue basis, it's the prediction is 1.53 million in 2024 in earnings per share, not adjusted, not EBITDA, earnings per share of $1.93. And so this is a significant expected progress next year. So how do we come up with that numbers? Well, one, there's some guidance from the companies traditionally. Secondly, we also have data from sources like Standard & Poor's that make some estimates. We also have other analysts that make estimates as well. And then fourthly, we do some internal work as well to customize it. But the predicted earnings for 2024 look very, very strong.
Yeah. Brian Guap, nope, he's not on today, but he's back tomorrow. We just wanted to have an analytic approach here today, which is why we got the professor, TDR, head of research, Bill McNarlin in. Before we get into our next company, Verano, we did want to share with our audience that you, Bill, launched last week our TDR comprehensive cannabis index that includes some key price metrics and information when comparing the top companies in the space. Can you touch on what's included and how you've, I guess, created this index?
Yeah, just similar to when you look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, or you look at the NASDAQ, and you look at the broad market to see how the market is doing.
Yeah.
We wanted something specific for cannabis. It was really difficult before this. Some cannabis companies, they were put in indexes for biotechnology. Some were going into healthcare. Some were going into consumer companies. And so, in the same index, or, you may have a cannabis company next to the Gap. It just didn't make a lot of sense. And so because of that, we wanted to break out something specific so we can cover the cannabis market. So one day we can see how well did the cannabis market perform. Then we went further. We broke it down into companies that are producers, companies that are retail, companies that are involved in the financial aspects, and then also the pharma companies. So that way you can look on an individual day, you can see how the whole cannabis market is performing.
What did you see, I guess, missing in the space when you crafted this, like in addition to what you just outlined?
There just was no way to get I had a question. I would say each day, how's the cannabis market doing today? Yeah. I had to go to, look through a whole list of stocks, and one stock's up 18%, something's down 2%. And also something that's been amazing to see is how there's such strong lack of correlation between the individual cannabis industries. Like on days that the producers are up, usually finance is down. So that was something that you can see very clearly in the indexes, and I found to be very useful.
Yeah. Well, listen, we talk a lot about every single day getting people to subscribe to our daily newsletter called the Baked In Newsletter, and how you're featuring weekly equity research reports. 69 companies now in the space that you're researching on. So when we factor in this index, how does, I guess, complement your future research plans when doing these weekly research reports?
The first thing, what we're going to do that's very different with our research is we are going to be, we've done some beta work, and maybe our friends here have seen the beta work.
Yeah.
But our real research that's going to be coming out after this earnings season is we are doing full stacks of companies in an index.
Okay.
So on the same week, we're going to release the research reports on all of the producers. Then a few weeks later, all of the finance companies, and then on all the retail companies. We're not picking and choosing which companies we're covering. We're covering them all. And we felt, just in our view, we felt that was the fairest way to do research and not to have conflicts of interest.
Yeah. Well said. Well, look forward to it. Timeline wise, you're saying the next couple of weeks that'll be launched?
Yeah, we're going to start coming out after this earnings season. So I think the first is going to come out in about 3 weeks, and then we're going to continue on. We're going to build other indexes and complementary areas and cover a whole universe of different small cap companies through time.
Mungie Boy, Mitch, you just added the link there. Mungie Boy's asking where the link is for the TDR Cannabis Index, and just subscribe to our Baked In newsletter, and that's where it could be featured. Let's now shift to company number 2. And we bring up Verano Hldgs, where they reported revenue for 2023, which came in at $938 million, which was a significant increase from 2023, 7% rise in the previous year, Anthony. So we saw an increase in numbers. However, profitability remains a challenge. Like, what did you think of these overall numbers when first glancing at them?
Yeah, so I mean, for the quarter, they came in at $237 million, 5% increase year over year, decrease of 1% quarter over quarter. Gross profit of $118 million, or 50% of revenue, Adjusted EBITDA, 73 million or 31% of revenue, and net cash from operations, 32 million. They've currently got 175 million in cash as of the end of the quarter.
Okay.
I thought the numbers mostly came in line. They guided up on the low end of their EBITDA guidance for 2024, which is positive. However, they guided down for Q1 of 2024 from a revenue guide. I mean, there was some stuff to like with this earnings report. There's also some stuff where I'm kind of questioning what's going on. There was a lot of talk about New Jersey and the weakness there. I mean, they saw decreases in revenue in Illinois and New Jersey. They saw an increase in revenue in Florida. New Jersey, they were saying that there was 19 dispensaries that were online when the market opened for adult use. Now there's somewhere around 90. So there's increased competition from a retail perspective. However, with the increase in retail, that also does allow them for an opportunity for wholesale. That being said, their wholesale revenue is down for the quarter. And when I'm saying down, like they're down negligibly, but they are down with the exception of Florida's top line revenue, which is up. And obviously there's no wholesale in Florida. And then going into the actual earnings report, so Illinois, they're saying their market share actually increased by 20% through Q4 2023 to 9% market share and number 3 in the state. So their market share increased, but the actual revenue went down. We were talking to Anthony Caniglio earlier. I know he was saying that we've seen price compression in Illinois. We're starting to see some stabilization in Illinois. So maybe Illinois starts to trend up going into Q1 and Q2. That being said, kudos to Verano because I can actually pick apart their earnings and understand from a granularity perspective what's going on. I can't do that with any other businesses. So these statements hold true to Verano because they actually are disclosing this stuff, which is much appreciated. And that being said, there was a lot to like, and there were some points of concern, but I mean, mostly everything was in line. Like I said, too, Verano, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida. Move is a impressive outfit in the state of Florida. It's a large footprint in the state of Florida. They sell a hell of a lot of flower in the state of Florida. Adult use hits, they're not going to be a huge beneficiary like you would see Trulieve, as Trulieve almost has 2 times the retail. However, it's going to be a massive growth driver for them with 70 plus retail locations in the state and a quality product at that.
Florida, when adult use goes live, 6 billion. I think Ohio is 4 billion, and if I'm correct, Pennsylvania is it 3 or 4?
Pennsylvania's 4. Ohio is about 2 and mid 2s.
Oh, I thought Ohio was 4. I could have swore I read 4, but I can understand your theme as to like why all is good in the long-term future for the company. Bill, as an analyst, what was your main takeaway from these latest results?
I think with Verano, the revenue was on the lower side for the growth. But what was very intriguing was the estimates for full year next year. They're high. Revenue estimates 1.5 billion. That's almost over a 50% increase. Earnings per share was $1.05 for next year. I will put a disclaimer on that. That does include the 280E rescheduling. But assuming that happens, again, it looks strong.
Emilio, I like what you're saying, guys. It's huge. What is coming? Do you think a lot of these numbers are factoring that these people think that rescheduling is going to happen? What's your guys' take on that?
Guidance on the top line revenue number, I don't think has anything to do with rescheduling coming. EBITDA and cash flow from operations and all of the metrics that we like to dive into, that, yes, I mean, they might be leveraging some sort of tax strategy that we're seeing Trulieve leverage. I'm sure they've got people already looking into it. And 280E going away would juice those numbers. That being said, I mean, Bill points out a pretty good metric. I mean, guiding to 1.5 billion in revenue, that is almost a 50% increase. And we know the team over there quite well. They're not showmen. They're more so executionist or executioners when it comes to their business. That's an impressive number, and I would be willing to bet it's a number that they stand behind, which we'll talk about with Aaron next week as we dive deeper into earnings.
Well, let's face it. A lot of these big MSOs, I think they all have one thing in common. They're executing, which is why they're at the top, right? And
yeah, these are all tier ones. I
Yeah.
mean, we got the tier ones with the
Yeah.
exception of Curaleaf all out of the way in the last 2 days, which is
Well,
nice.
when you break down these numbers and what's going to be moving from a legislation standpoint, you can understand why we keep saying, don't focus on the week-to-week stuff. Focus on what you can see this company being worth 2-3 years down the road. Before we move on to Green Thumb again, Bill, what would you say are some like going forward estimates for Verano here in 2024?
Yeah, for Verano, again, very strong. Earnings per share, our consensus is $1.05 and revenue of $1.5 billion. And so that's over a 50% increase from the numbers they did this year. So it's a strong consensus with 4 different sources of information we're using.
Yeah. Lone Wolf writes 2024 is the year to accumulate and 2025 is the year to celebrate. Well, that's actually sounds like a political line. Like that's actually pretty good.
That's probably pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, judging by the tape, you kind of just got to focus on the numbers we just saw and don't even look at the price action.
Yeah. Good point.
Because it's pretty much all fake at this point.
Guap, love you, buddy. I know you're not in front of the camera, but I know you're behind the scenes today. Amen to Prof. Bill. Yeah, leave some comments below. And what do you think of the professor? Very, very good as far as some of the numbers and information that he's sharing. But need to have you on regularly, Bill, and to break down, which we will be doing over the next couple of weeks as we dive deeper into this earnings season. This is the TDR Traded Black podcast. Dive into earnings season special edition here on a Thursday. I'm your host, Shdales, with TDR head of research, Bill McNarland, and TDR co-host, Anthony Varell. And speaking of Anthony Varell, let's focus now on the last company, GTI, who reported yesterday. We touch on 3 key takeaways in all of our editorial stories found on thedalesreport.com that Bill simplifies for the everyday reader investor. So what would you say are 2 or 3 key takeaways from GTI's earnings from yesterday?
I mean, Guap just basically called out the biggest one. Cash flow from operations, $225 million, increased 42% year over year. It's one thing Ben Kovler knows how to do. It's generate profit from selling cannabis. GTI was an impressive earnings print. What I like to see the most is he put his money where his mouth is. He was buying back stock all year, and he increased the buyback program going into next year.
Yeah.
So he obviously plans to buy back more stock. I'd be doing the same thing if I was him. We say that his company is rich in terms of valuation. Ben knows what's coming. Ben knows what his company is going to look like 2025, 2026, 2027. He's putting his money where his mouth is, buying his stock. That being said, fundamentals, I mean, I don't think there's anything you can really poke a hole in terms of the operational efficiencies or things going on at GTI. I love that they are growing their Florida footprint. I think they spun up 6 new stores in 2023, and I'm sure you'll see some more drop here shortly.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they strengthen their footprint in that Florida market. I know you've touched on
smart. He's smart. He's not going to go in and start to just buy and expand for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
From my understanding, they do have a grow facility that's ready to come online in Central Florida to meet the demand of this increased retail and probably get them ready for adult use.
Yeah. As I touched on, 3 key takeaways you always outline in your editorial stories when doing any really editorial story. But for these earnings with GTI, again, Bill, I'll ask you, what were your big takeaways?
I think so. They had something that was really special. Congratulations to them. They had earnings per share that were positive.
Right.
They weren't adjusted. They weren't EBITDA. They were real. They came to the bottom line after everything, including the unfortunate tax situation that we're experiencing right now. So kudos to them for that.
You want to say that again? Yeah. Right.
Kudos for them. Real earnings per share, even with the tax handicap.
Yeah.
The second thing was the growth was slower. That's fine. But next year we're expecting about 15% growth on the revenue side, so that's good. But we're expecting, and Guap made the comment about the cash flow from operations. That revenue growth, even though it's not going to be huge, we expect it to significantly translate into earnings. And so we're predicting 78 cents earnings per share next year in 2024. And that's from the not just the revenue growth, but also from the cash flow from operations, which is increasing their profit margins.
So estimates 15% growth for next year, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bill, where was that guidance? Where did you pull that guidance number from? The 1.5 billion for Verano.
So we're getting 4 sources. We're getting some company stuff, some other analysts, Standards and Poor's, and then also we're doing some of our own analysis as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Christian Kurse writes, Verano, 50% revenue increase. How? Which markets? Did you see that comment?
I saw that. That's what prompted me to ask where we got the 1.5 billion guide from.
We'll look into that a little bit further.
Yeah, we can look into that. Yeah.
But Alan told me to sell GTI. Won't get into that one.
Well, price went down today, so he wasn't wrong.
Yeah, all right. Give him kudos to that. But you said off the top, Bill, that look, we look at Trulieve, revenue increase 4%, Verano 7%, and GTI 4%. But Statista, a global economic data provider, touching on that again, where they say the global 5-year cannabis growth is about 14%. In comparison, tobacco is around 2.5%. So this 14% actually should be a good barometer to measure companies' earnings. Saying that, what did you find as far as growth for the overall industry for 2024?
So far, what we're seeing, it's a mixed bag. Some of the smaller companies have a higher growth rate than some of the larger companies. It's easier to grow earnings of a smaller company and revenue than of a large company. But eventually, if you're pacing at a 14% growth rate in an industry, stocks have to go up.
Of course. And you add in, I know you're smirking over there. What were you going to say?
That they should go up.
They better.
Right? I mean, they should, but I've been doing this for a long time. And yeah, I mean, I really hate to say this, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but until the plumbing is fixed,
I know,
and until these things are off the shithole that's the CSE, like this is just going to keep happening.
Yeah,
that's why it's kind of like develop your own thesis. Don't really pay attention to the numbers. And I mean, you got to just be thinking long term.
Yeah.
But I do agree with Bill. I mean, technically, these earnings reports from a fundamental perspective, stock should be up today across the board.
Yep. I think investors are exhausted right now. They're just waiting for one thing. But that's just the way the industry performs. And it's a headline industry, but those aren't bad headlines based on those numbers. Mark Sains writes, what do you guys think of Curaleaf earnings coming up? Any take you want to provide on that, Anthony?
I got no take on that. I'll give my 2 cents on Curaleaf's earnings when Curaleaf reports. If I had to guess, Boris will probably have a pretty big emphasis on Germany around the report. And I mean, again, Curaleaf, Florida, huge Florida operation.
Yeah.
These tier ones knocked it out of the park with exposure to the right markets.
Yeah. And
that is coming to roost. The CapEx has been built. Now it's just getting these markets online from an adult use standpoint and then executing.
Yeah. Glop, thanks for the feedback. Trulieve market share in Florida, crazy. When Florida goes rec, they should see some same store sales growth go bananas. Which other MSO can really say that? Good point. But yeah, Florida is a hot market right now, and a lot of people following that closely in addition to hot news like rescheduling. But all in all, appreciate you guys obviously coming here on a Thursday, diving in deep to these 3 earnings reports. And Bill, great work. And we will keep close on that cannabis index and how it becomes more and more comprehensive. Again, please like this video. We want this to go viral. The more you like and comment, the more algorithms that YouTube likes, and we'll get this out. We want to build this community. And as usual, please subscribe to our channel. And as usual, we got a new equity research report coming out today. We won't say who it is, Bill, but you got to find out by logging on to thedalesreport.com and subscribing to our daily newsletter Baked In, which features all that and includes, like we said, our new cannabis index, and it becomes more and more comprehensive over the next week or two, and you'll find a lot of helpful information. Any questions that you have for Bill or Anthony directly, feel free to reach out to us, leave some comments below, and we'll get back to you with feedback. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, gents, and we'll check back in with you tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. with Dan the Chart Man, who's back on tomorrow. So that'll be great.
Talk to you guys.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel